Radical Optimism opens up a really interesting conversation about expectations versus the actual album that you got. The actual album that is out there that you can hear versus what you expected it to be. Because one of the main talking points around this album so far is not only that it's a flop, but that's just Stan lingo at this point. Stans will just say anything's a flop, really. But that is one thing I am seeing. I had to bring that up because I can't lie to you guys. It is something I'm seeing. But another thing, one of the bigger things I would say, is how people everywhere I'm looking is saying that this album is something that they were hoping for better. They expected better of Dua Lipa. They think she's a better artist than what she is giving us on this album. And look, do I disagree with that statement, with that sentiment? No, of course I don't. I think it's absolutely true. She is better than this, really. I think Future Nostalgia is great. It was in my top 20-ish albums of 2020. You should go back to that video and watch it. It was really high up. I've talked about how many of her singles are always some of the best of each year they come out. I've even given her high praise and said that I think at the rate she could go prior to this album coming out, I would say, or even after this album, really, I don't know, but still, the singles from this album are really good, and I was saying that the rate of her success, her hit ratio, could really cement herself as like a pop legend in years to come, because so many good songs already with just 3 albums is really impressive, and is maintaining such high success with that too. So do I agree that I expected more, and this album didn't quite deliver on the fronts I thought it was going to? Yeah, but I still have to talk about what the album we got. If I spent a whole video talking about what I expected, that isn't reviewing the album that we got, is it? That's not talking about the album they gave you. It's a really poor reviewing technique to do that when you're just talking about, I thought I was going to get this the whole time. Talk about what you got. And what we got, I think, is still decent. I think it's still a decent album. It's not what I expected, and it's not what I hoped for, but the songs that we get, I think, are all right. I hoped and expected for more obvious Kevin Parker inspirations and involvements across this album. It was a hope of mine, and I expected it because Houdini told me that's what I should expect. It was the lead single. You led up this album, Dua Lipa, with that track, and in everyone's mind, they thought they were going to get, and you were going to go in more of that kind of neo-psych direction. I wasn't expecting it to sound like the Slow Rush or Currents. I think if you did, you're very naive. No mainstream pop artist is going to completely divert their sound. Well, I say that Beyonce 100% would and has, but most artists aren't Beyonce, and most aren't daring to do that. And at this stage in Dua Lipa's career, she couldn't risk that either. She hasn't quite cemented that following that will live and die for her until the end, like Beyonce has. So I wasn't going into this thinking, we're going to get the Slow Rush, guys. All these songs are going to sound like Lost in Yesterday and Borderline and Cause It's True. They're all going to be so good like this. I didn't think that, but I at least expected that neo-psych influence popping up in the way that it does in Kevin's music, right? I think a lot of people did. But with each single that went along, she just stripped that sound ever so slightly back to the point where it was barely even noticeable on Illusion. And it was just like, did you just get scared? Did you think that the album wasn't going to sell well if you pushed that sound more? Or did you just kind of tease people and then deliver on a different front? I don't know. Because if the album was a full album of Houdini's, guys, I think this review would be much different, and I think the reception would be a lot different too, because I really do think she was tapping into something really interesting and unique with that track. But alas, we didn't get it. Instead, we got an album that feels the total opposite of Future Nostalgia, where we're coming off an album where it feels like every track could have been a single. The only track that didn't feel that way was Boys Will Be Boys. Every other track you feel like you could hear it out and about and it would be a smash hit on the charts. It was that good of a ratio of hit songs. This album kind of doesn't feel that way. End of an Era, though, I think could be. I think that's a really solid pop song. I think the chorus is really good. I think actually across this album and on this track, she's really flexing her vocal ability. That's one thing I'm not seeing as much around and about where people are talking about this album. I actually think vocally she might be at her best on this album. She's really hitting some lovely notes, some really sweet melodies on this, and it sounds really good. The nice little rumble of the bass in the background on this track sounds great too. I think it could have gone further with the instrumental, but I do like the rumblings and I do like how this track sounds, and it picks up as it goes along. These Walls has this really summery, breezy sound, which I like a lot. I think this track has very much the overall vibe of the album locked in, where it just feels like a cocktail at the beach sound across the whole thing. And that's a nice sound. I'm not going to get mad at that. I think that's a good sound and she pulls it off really well. Certainly much better than what we were promised with Endless Summer Vacation last year, which ended up being more of a threat by calling it endless than it actually did being an exciting Endless Summer Vacation, because that album did not deliver on that front at all. I think Dua Lipa has at least locked down the summery, enjoyable, breezy aesthetic with these kinds of tracks. Quite enjoy the line on the chorus as well, where she says, if these walls could talk, they'd say you're fucked, which I think is quite funny. Nice little sense of humour bleeding through there from Dua, which I think she could let shine through even more. Tracks like Good in Bed showed us that on Future Nostalgia 2. There's a sense of humour there that she's not letting out very often, but when it comes out, she's got a really nice dry sense of humor that I want to hear more on her tracks, and this track was a good example of that for me. And despite the fact that it does almost sound like it's about to lead into Kendrick Lamar's These Walls on the chorus, overall it's a really good track that really does highlight a nice idea of, you know, if there was a fly on the wall, if the walls could talk, if there was someone else here watching us argue or watching this relationship fall apart, they would really tell you the truth and, you know, acknowledge that this is not going to work. A sentiment we've heard before in music, but I think her spin on it works. I did already say the singles on this album are killer at the start of this review, but I didn't actually go into much detail. But Training Season, hello, what a track that is. Nice combination of like the sort of Houdini sound, but going into more of like a dance poppy sound. It is very much a marriage of future nostalgia and what Houdini was offering, and just pairing them together, adding the flavour to a dance pop jam, and it is just such a great tune. Like, I really do like this song a lot. And Illusion as well, which you couldn't get more summery than this. Literally instantaneously made for prime time Love Island soundtrack music. The next season of that is going to have this in the background. Mark my words right now. The oohs on the chorus are just so effective. The way she hits those, ooh, what you doing, sounds so great, so ridiculously catchy. And then that like little instrumental breakdown, basically giving like Kevin Parker his own little solo section there. I know Danielle Hall is on some of these tracks too, but I think, you know, the Kevin Parker feel is really much the sound that stands out on this album when it does pop up. Otherwise, I really couldn't tell you who is producing these songs, which is a shame, because I thought Dua Lipa just had a little bit more identity to her music than just dropping something that, I don't know, Jess Glynn could make. Not saying Illusion sounds like Jess Glynn, but Anything for Love kind of feels like it could just be any other British pop artist dropping a track. Not that the recent Jess Glynn album was good, by the way. By the way, she dropped an album like 2 weeks ago. Did you know? Probably not. I don't know what the hell happened to her. But there is just that kind of like Radio 1 safe sounding poppy music from a new upcoming British female artist that's getting all the hype but fizzles out a few years later. Feel to some of these tracks, dare I say, they're still okay on the ears, but I think Dua Lipa is a bar above that. Do you get what I mean? Falling Forever just sounds a little bit too desperate to be a hit. Like, this song sounds like it's so desperate to make it into the charts. It's almost like she was watching the success of the other tracks as they were coming out and not really making a huge splash. They've charted high, do not get me wrong, they've been hits, but comparatively to previous albums, they have sunken down the pecking order, really, haven't they? They're nowhere near as big as her other tracks. And it was almost like they were like, okay, let's just get in the studio and drop a song like this. And the how long just feels a little try hard to me. I don't know, man. I'd hate to think that that's the approach they took, but it just has that aura to it. Happy for you though. What a great track this is to close out the album. Popping in, coming in clutch right at the end with that trip-hop sound she promised. Yeah, another style of music she said leading up to the album was going to be on the album that didn't quite deliver. Popping up in clutch right on the last song, like a deadbeat dad showing up to the last 10 minutes of your birthday party being like, I told you I'd come. I missed like all of it, but I'm here, right? I told you I'd come. I didn't let you down. I showed up. Where was this for the rest of the album? I don't really know, but confusingly, this album is just a mismatch and mix and match of sounds that come and go, like Houdini, I guess. It's all right overall. I do want to stress that I enjoy it when it's on, but yeah, you get it. She's not really pulling up trees. She's not really changing opinions that may have been preconceived before the album, which is that she's a bit basic. I think that's a harsh opinion to have of her, to be honest. I think she's better than just being basic. But I've seen and heard and talked to a lot of people who just think she is a bit basic. And is this album going to change anyone's mind with that notion, with that opinion? It's only really going to double down, isn't it? Which is a shame, because like I say, expectations wise, you just think she is a cut above a lot of pop artists out there right now. I still have hopes for her in the future, and I think she can bounce back even greater with this one. But yeah, it just feels like a little flat overall. It's still decent, but decent I think should be, you know, attached to somebody else out there, not Dua Lipa. It's a 6 out of 10 from me, but you are on borrowed time with this one, Dua Lipa. You are on borrowed time. Definitely keeping an eye out. Not that you care that I've said you're on borrowed time. Do I matter to you? No. But yeah, it's all right overall. Just a step down. Let me know your thoughts. Seeing a lot of scathing reviews for this one. If you agree with those, tell me in the comments. If you agree with me, let me know as well. Or if you're completely on the opposite end and you think this is an amazing album, that's one of the best of the year, tell me why in the comments as well. All opinions welcome. Just don't be a dick. Just don't be a dick. Let me know. Subscribe. Check out my Patreon as well. Support me over there. That'd be amazing. Have a good day and goodbye.